welcome to Tarmac. I'm Dave.
And I'm Matthew, and as you can see today, we're by the water, but we've got to be careful because this is a shark.
That's right, it's the BYD Shark. It's a hybrid ute that it really is something very special. Come, let's take a look at this. Now, let's be honest, it's really hard to talk about a BYD Shark without making reference to the blockbuster Jaws. And I'm going to try to interject some sort of fun facts about the Jaws movie as we go through. I mean, for example, it actually cost $9 million to make and grossed over $450 million. And that really means in nowadays terms, it's around about $2.2 billion. So it really is a massive, massive thing. And speaking of massive things and also very, very profitable things, what you're talking about is BYD has gone from virtually nowhere in our sort of local neck of the woods to become a very, well, and one of the number one sort of turnover brands in New Zealand, particularly in the EV market. Anyway, now they're fishing in the ute market, and this is what the BYD Shark is all about. Looking around the front here, it makes a very bold statement with the BYD branding across the front. It is a very sort of Chinese thing to make sure you know which brand it is, and it does distinguish from the other brands that are in the marketplace. If you look at the front, the DRLs are in a sort of C-clamp sort of look, so following the tradition there. Very abrupt front. It's also quite a dominant front. It's hard to miss in your rear view mirror. Now, you're going to need a bigger boat is one of the immortal lines from the movie, and that was actually an ad-lib thing, and it was actually more in relation to the support boats, but it turned out to be really good once the sort of shocking size of the Shark came out. But another fun fact. But the actual boat itself, the Orca, was a 42-foot boat, which is actually around about 12 meters in length. But this vehicle here is around about 5.4 meters in length. Also, in terms of height, it's 2 meters, so I obviously have to look up. I mean, some of my colleagues don't, but there you go. And also, when you start to look around the side here, it has sort of typical off-road capabilities as far as the wheel arch goes around its 18-inch wheels. Very much a protection around the sort of side and seals here, seals, there you go, and also a step up here for easy entrance for somebody like me to get in. Something of particular note, and if you're going to use anything, the shark fin antenna up here, which is great, so perfect use of that there. And also, as you start to move down the back here, you have all your cargo load, which is around about 750 kilograms of weight there. You can actually put a payload in there, and just sizable. And actually, I don't know if you can still see me now because it's so far back here. Now let's have a look around the rear. Now, while on the matter of weight, the Shark, or the actual mechanical shark in Jaws, whose actual name was Bruce because it was named after the lawyer that was part of the production, that actually weighed around about 1.2 tons, which is quite excessive. But the actual shark that it was supposed to be representing was a 25 foot shark, which would range about which would have a weight of around about 3 tons. So, but weight is actually a bit of an enemy for this vehicle. So, as again, in terms of payload, you've got substantial size, but the weight is probably a little bit less than the normal Ranger. And also, when it comes to towing, it'll only tow around about 2.5 tons. So if you do have a bigger boat, you probably won't, this is probably not the one for you. But 2.5 tons is pretty good, and it will actually take it. It's just that it goes over the GVM thing, so you'll need different licenses and things like that. The other thing, most of the weight is actually underneath here, so it's very low to the ground because the battery is all into the ladder frame chassis down there. So sizable weight, but also quite low down, so very good. Now, BYD are calling this Shark a super hybrid, and that's because they're calling it a DMO, which is a dual motor off-road sort of powertrain system. And what that gives you is a 1.5 litre petrol engine and 2 electric motors, one on each axle. So there is quite a substantial amount of power and torque going through. In fact, 321 kilowatts of power and 650 newton meters of torque. I mean, that's the same sort of size as a 4-litre V8, so it is quite substantial. 0 to 100 is in 5.7 seconds, so it does feel EV quick off the mark, and actually surprisingly sits very well on the road. The other thing is you can switch to EV only mode and get around about 100 kilometers of EV only range, so it even starts very silently, which is quite cool. In terms of emissions, you've got around about 47 grams of CO2 coming out, so it's actually very good for the environment and surprisingly better than, I don't know, a diesel-powered Ford or anything like that. But on the whole, it's a very smart system, and the other really good sort of pièce de la résistance is that you can charge in both AC and DC, so you can get very quick charging and make sure your battery is fully charged. Anyway, speaking of sharks, Matthew, the financial advisor's inside, and he'll show you what's going on in there.
Well, I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. Dave's almost taken a bite out of me there. Coming back to the interior and looking at the seats, you would have thought that BYD should have used the Atto 3 seats for a car like this, particularly because they were widely compared to wetsuits in terms of the material and the feel. But nope, instead they haven't gone for the wetsuits, they've gone for a more premium fabric, and it's ventilated as well. And as you can see, between the driver and passenger, there's quite a bit of distance as well, thanks to this quite large central tunnel here. So it doesn't allow you to get quite so chummy with your passenger. Over there, it almost looks like somebody's taken a great big bite out of the dashboard, but instead the function is it's a little tray for storing things like a phone, for example, but also doubles up as a handle for your passenger in case they need to hold on when you're really sort of riding the waves, if you like. The sort of interesting quirks and designs continue across, where they've gone and highlighted the vents in a sort of orangey color, and similarly with the contrast stitching that goes across the dashboard, it's also got an orange theme to it, so a nice little contrast from the black materials that are used otherwise. To the center console, you've got a really interesting layout here. Of course, 2 grab handles for either passenger, and then a dual phone setup over there where you've got a wireless phone charger and NFC connectivity as well. But enough of that. I think it's time that we look at that and talk about the technology. The real piece that dominates the interior experience with this Shark is, of course, this 15-point-inch infotainment screen. And in typical BYD fashion, you can actually rotate it, so you can have it in a landscape or a portrait orientation, and the sort of layout and things changes accordingly as well. Interestingly, with this screen, you can actually have either the maps displaying on the larger portion of the screen, as you can see here, or you can swap it and just have a wallpaper image of your choosing. And there's plenty of ways where you can integrate your phone's gallery with the infotainment screen to share photos and things. Now, firstly, note the layout of the screen. So it's got this real sort of tablet-like look to it in this portrait orientation. And just like you would on a smartphone, you can swipe down to have a shortcut menu there with, for example, your connectivity options there and some shortcuts to the vehicle control. The other thing is you can also activate the battery save function over here and choose what level you want to preserve the battery at. And then, of course, adjust things like your volume and screen brightness and all of those things. Go back to the screen here, and well, this in this particular layout is a lot of, if you like, wasted space almost. Down here is really where all the configuration and things happen. So why don't I just rotate the screen and then take you through the options on there. As you can see, a lot more user friendly, and I think certainly design friendly in this landscape orientation. It sort of just fits a bit better into the dashboard when rotated like this. The fixed bars down the bottom are for various different functions, so you can actually edit them and choose your favorites. Heading back into the menu here, the key thing really is the My Car function. So you go into that and you can choose between various different settings. So very easy one touch to open all windows, close all windows, as well as turn on that seat ventilation or heating according to your preference. So quite a interesting thing, and plenty of functions to play around with in terms of your interaction with the actual car on this screen here. Head down to the bottom there, and if you hit the car icon, you can then go into things like the actual wireless connectivity, the ADAS, for example, adjusting that, having a look at your energy monitor in terms of setting that up and regenerating the battery, and then of course a couple of more functions to do with your vehicle The screen in front of the driver is a rather large one as well, sitting at about 10.25 inches. And this is not movable, it is fixed as it is. So I guess if you are a fan of more portrait orientation screens or oriented screens, a bit of a bummer for you there. That aside, the screen actually is packed with information, as you can see, and gives you all the vital things as well as making certain aquatic nods. So as you can see the shark on screen there, the background behind it is almost like either an ocean or waves around it, so almost like it's not swimming as such, but more sailing is a better word for it. Looking at the screen, on your left side you've got key data around your temperatures and pressures for your tires, and below that you've got your battery range percentage and then your petrol range in terms of kilometers. So note how it doesn't actually show you what your EV only range is, it just shows you what your petrol range is. And then you've got a figure there that actually does show you what your combined range is, 592 kilometers in our case here. On the right hand side you've got a menu there. We've got audio currently showing, but you can toggle that to show according to your preference. And up the top you've got various other functions around the ADAS system, the speed sign recognition, and also whether you're in the EV mode or not, and then other functions and displays as well as the speed. Looking at the steering wheel, well, it's got quite a unique look to it because it's a large unit and it doesn't actually have a third spoke. It's only 2 spokes and these sort of floating spoke things below. What the floating ones actually do is adjust the drive mode setting, so you can go between eco, normal or sport. And then on the right hand side you can adjust the terrain mode, so you can go between mud, sand, snow or mountain. So 4 different options there, and with each one that you change it automatically adjusts the background. So now that I'm in mud, it looks more like a sort of salt flat desert kind of place. So interestingly, your interaction with the car, it also adjusts the ADAS as well according to the mode that you have chosen for off-road purposes. The steering wheel itself, looking further up, you've got right hand side buttons to adjust things like your tracks and your volume, as well as control your interaction with the BYD assistant and phone calls and things. And then on the left hand side you've got functions around your adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist and all of those things. So a lot going on there. And the steering wheel itself, as I said, big and chunky, very much truck-like from that sense. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go and take a look at how this thing actually performs on the road with that EV and petrol powertrain married together. So let's go and hit the waves.
Okay, so the BYD Shark 6, the big thing obviously is the fact that it's a plug-in hybrid, and what that means is when you switch it on, it's quite disconcerting because there's no engine roar or rattle or diesel rattle or anything like that. All it is just on. But the other good thing is the fact that being a sort of EV size sort of thing, you can put it into sport and just take off like this. I mean, this is not your normal ute that just sort of, I don't know, rattles around and just messes around. This gets off the mark very quickly and also very silently. So the other good thing is if you're working downtown or something like that and you need to get around or get away really quietly at night, this is your option.
It was amazing when we were filming only on a public place and moving the car around for the video and pictures and things, how many people were remarking that, oh, it's an EV, because all they could hear was this sort of little high-pitched noise that EVs make when they're in motion. But little do they know, it hides a dual powertrain type setup.
Yeah, so 800 kilometers of anticipated range is phenomenal. So, and that just gets rid of any of this sort of range anxiety stuff that, EVs that go on. It really does sit into that diesel territory, and which is not bad for something that weighs, it's a substantial amount of weight actually. Almost 3 tons is getting up there in heftiness.
And hefty it is indeed, not just in terms of its weight, but in terms of its dimensions as well. It's quite as Dave pointed out, not just long, but tall as well. It's has a real presence about it as a truck.
Actually, yeah, it really does. But oddly, when you're driving it, it doesn't feel that way. It feels, yeah, substantial, but it seems to the weighting in the steering wheel means that it sort of drives nicely. It's very well mannered, actually.
It's quiet and refined. Suspension setup is quite good too. My one remark though is the steering ratio is really slow, so you do find yourself having to turn quite a bit and almost, steer the ship if you like. So
The modes, the off-road modes. Your left-hand side has got your regular road modes, but the moment you go off-road, you have these things like Sandland and Muddyland. It's quite cute, and also very good at what it does. So it does change the whole traction control and make it very off-roady.
but at the same time, it does that duality really well in terms of having off-road functionality, settings, all of these different things. But then you have the screen, the technology, which is slick. It's, like a regular passenger car rather than an off-road utility vehicle like this. So there's a real duality about this show.
Yeah, the thing that I would have liked on that is some more off-road sort of screens to tell you what you're doing, your elevations and stuff like that. But there is an off-road vehicle from BYD called the Leopard, and that does take things to a whole new level as far as what information you get and also its capability. So those sort of things are in their toolkit, I guess. So this one really does sit between the sort of regular, I guess, rural side, but more urbanized as well. So it's quite a refined or domesticated ute.
And certainly having that plug-in hybrid powertrain allows it to be a solution for those ute buyers who want a truck for urban living, who want to commute to work in a truck, but don't necessarily make use of the serious towing capabilities or off-roading bits and pieces. So it does pretty well to satisfy those needs.
Yeah, it really does. As far as layout goes, I'm really impressed with the fit and finish of it. I really very much think it's up there, probably surprisingly up there. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's just very well put together. I don't like the fact that you can't get your arm up here. It doesn't make me feel like a ute driver. It makes me feel more like a car driver. And also down here, it's my left arm just seems to be sort of hitting on this sort of cold part rather than a normal resting. So I think they've got some work to do as far as the benchmark, as far as the Ranger goes. But for their first sort of foray into ute market, I think it's amazing, actually.
And it's undeniable that there are bits and pieces that are inspired by the Ranger. And I think while they have done that to an extent, they have also put their own spin on the general feel, fit and finish of the vehicle as well. So it feels unique.
Yeah, it's a good workhorse, but I'm not necessarily convinced it's a number one workhorse. I think it's a really good compromise in terms of branching your sort of your leisure life or your normal family life in with something that will shift stuff around at the weekend, and you can it will do most things, which is really good. And that range is just, like I said, substantial. So there you have it, the new BYD Shark 6 Ute, taking plug-in hybrid to the next level and really off-road with your DMO and dual motor off-road. And it is a substantial vehicle, and as I said many times now, it does cross over between that urban and rural, all-encompassing sort of opportunities, really. So I'm really impressed with it. Is it going to stand the test of time and really challenge the Ranger? I guess time will tell, and actually you'll be able to tell because you're going to be the buyer at the end of the day. But I'm impressed with it.
It, I think, appeals to the more city-friendly youth buyer, which is an increasingly large segment of the market. So it has its place, and certainly the reception so far seems positive. I've seen a fair few on the road, and even just this morning, people seem to be pointing it out and taking notice. So No, there you go.
Yeah, it's hard to miss. And you shouldn't miss any of our videos either as well. So make sure you check some of our back catalogue. Anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and we will see you on the next one. Do-do, do-do, do-do-do-do-do.
Mate, seriously, there's no food here.
He is at one with nature, isn't he?
Just take off really quickly, like this.